Hello, Homestead. Happy Advisory Day, and welcome back to episode 4 of the discussion that we've been having on the Holocaust and just some issues related to the Holocaust. Last time you watched about a 24-minute video in which we talked about German propaganda, and some of those images were quite scary. Some of them were pretty intense when you think about the process of indoctrinating a large group of people, even very young children, into thinking a certain way, into thinking that a group of people is not human, can be targets of persecution, can be targets of destruction, in trying to shape a mindset. So today what I want to do is I want to look at the United States Holocaust Museum webpage and look at some of the rescuers, some of the people who did good during the Holocaust. And think back to one of our very first discussions. We talked about the Life in the Jar play. We talked about Irina Sendler and her actions. Now remember, she was working in the Warsaw Ghetto. A ghetto is a place where the Jewish populations were rounded up and they're put into these ghettos, these walled-off sections of cities, and they're held there until a decision can be made of what to do with them or where to send them. Life in the ghetto is not easy. Food is, it's not a sustainable amount of food that you're given. You may need to go to the black market to get food to survive. Water's not provided. You're on your own there. And as time goes by, if a spot in a camp opens up for 5,000 people, the Germans would go in, round up the 5,000 people, and then send them off via trains to the camps. And so the ghettos themselves are very difficult. Lots of death does occur inside the ghetto. And so what Irina did in rescuing 2,500 kids, 2,500 children, she risked her own life. And the network that she was involved in, they were in jeopardy also. But they did what they thought was right. They did what they were meant to, or kind of moved to do. When you think of people with good hearts and reaching out and doing good things, what is the impact upon the world? What is the ripple effect? When you think about the movie, Pay It Forward, as we do good things for people, does that then move that forward? And I guess World War II and the Holocaust is seen as it should be, in a very negative, very, very dim light. When you think about the Holocaust, you think about huge numbers of people, and oftentimes you hear the word 6 million killed. Killed, or is a better word, murdered, just taken away from their lives, they're taken away from their homes, from their families, and just slaughtered. How does that happen? How does that happen when good people exist? Is part of it the indoctrination that we saw last time? And so this time let's look at some of these individuals and what they do, and what impact one person can make upon a surrounding population. So let's take a quick look at the Holocaust Museum webpage. It's a very full webpage, just so much information. And I think one thing that's interesting along the side here, it's the different languages that this website can be viewed in. And so when you look at different parts of the world that are dealing with today Holocaust denial, the Holocaust Museum wants to have this website in the languages that the people in those areas can see this information, can be made aware of what did happen. When you think about some of the banners at the top, and I think it's this third one here. Let's try number 2 here. Never again begins with you. Never again begins with you. So what things around us in our school hallways should not be happening, but they do, and we don't take action. Let's not just yell at people, but what can we do from a positive standpoint to try to reinforce positive behaviors? And so when you look at the website, and there's so many vehicles on here. This talks about a soccer player, and I know that there was just a movie made. One of the soccer clubs in Europe visited Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Israel, and they made a movie. And they're trying to connect with people in that sphere, the soccer world, and students who are fans of soccer, trying to make those connections. At the bottom, you have all kinds of, in a way, current events. Over here, things that are happening around the country. If things come near us, what can we get involved in? So just a very full webpage, very, very well done. But one thing I want to look at is this tab here. This tab is about a village in France, Le Chambon. And what is happening here is this village has decided that they're going to get involved and help Jewish refugees. They help people outside of the Jewish world as well. They help other people who are being targeted by the Nazis for death. But in this middle paragraph, it talks about Low-Chambon, 5,000 people population. The surrounding villages, 24,000 people population. But they're going to provide refuge for 5,000 people. So look at what a relatively small group of people can do. And think about that provided refuge. So you're being brought in. You're being hunted by the Nazis. And this village is going to bring you in. Their pastor, his wife, some of the leaders of the group, they're going to bring you in, and they're going to provide you safety. They're going to hide you. They're going, and whether that means physically, like in the floor, in the loft of a barn, in the woods surrounding the area, or just hide you through identity, giving you false papers, giving you a different identity, making you harder for the Nazis to find. Now, again, these people are risking their lives, and some of the people in Low-Chambon will be taken out and will be killed. But in the bigger scope of things, they save several thousand people. And so this is a village. This is a group of people that decides to do the right thing, get involved, and save lives. We're going to switch now to a man named Varian Fry. And Varian Fry, he's an American who gets involved in Marseille. And when I say get involved, what exactly does that mean? How does one get involved? And what's happening here is he's going to provide money. He's going to provide false documentation. He's going to provide a way for people to escape the Nazis and get to safety. And so when you think about what's happening, here is somebody who's providing that avenue of safety, providing an avenue of life. And that is so very important. This one man, Varian Fry, will provide safety, will provide rescue for about 2,000 people. Switching slides again, we're going to go to this man, Raoul Wallenberg. Now, he's born in Sweden. So Wallenberg is Swedish, and he's going to get involved in Hungary. Now, in France, it was interesting because as the war progresses, different people face different challenges. So at first, not all of France fell. Later on, a French government that was pro-Nazi, something called the Vichy French government, will come to power, and they'll start hunting Jews. The Germans will eventually take all of France, and they'll kind of speed up their pursuit of the capture of Jewish people. Kind of the same thing with Hungary in Eastern Europe. As the war gets more intense, towards the end, things get very real for the Jewish populations. They're not targeted for a big part of the war, but in 1944, as the Germans get more involved in Hungary, the Jewish populations are specifically targeted. And so Raoul Wallenberg will go in, and he will set up an office, and he'll get different apartments, different houses, different flats. And what he does is he makes them into government buildings, Swedish diplomatic buildings. He provides false documentation for Jews, giving them diplomatic security. And they have to go live in these buildings until they can escape. And he tries to do this as fast as he can. Because as the Germans are coming in and they're trying to attack these populations, they're pretty quick as well. And so Wallenberg and his network, again, he's not working alone. There are people who are helping him. They get involved and they try to provide this documentation for safety. By the end of the war, Wallenberg is credited, he and his network, they're credited with saving about 100,000 Jews. Now, he has a sad ending. In Eastern Europe, the Soviets come in at the end of the war, and the Soviets will take over. And they arrest Wallenberg, and nobody knows for sure what happened, but from the documentation that is available, it appears that Wallenberg died in a Soviet prison in 1947. So his work in Eastern Europe, it provides him a little bit more of a dangerous situation, and he does die as a result of his involvement. We'll look at one more person. Now, this information, there's a lot of information on this slide. Nicholas Winton, and it tells his story. And as we scroll down to the bottom, a lot of times at the bottom of these pages, they have related articles, and then here you can listen to an interview with Nicholas Winton. This is a man who was in his late 20s when the war breaks out, and he hears through friends. He's a stockbroker. And he hears through friends about what's going on in Eastern Europe, what's going on in Austria, and what's going on in Czechoslovakia. And he feels like he needs to do something to get involved. And so he puts together a program. Himself, some friends, a secretary. He does his job during the day, and then in the afternoons and the evenings, they just sit down and they start making false papers. They start gathering money. They start building a network that will allow them to rescue kids out of Czechoslovakia. And he ends up going over and he meets with parents of these children, and he provides rescue to 669 kids. And so if you think back to Irena Sendler, one of the hard things about her story is she goes to these parents and she basically presents them the option of, I can get your kids out. And through a network of people, we can save the lives of your kids. And so then the parents are faced with the situation, what do we do? Same thing with Nicholas Winton. He can get the kids out. And so these parents have to turn their kids over. And it's a very sad story. Eventually the story is discovered, what Winton did, and they interview some of the children and just their memories of saying goodbye to their parents. A mother who puts her kid onto a train, has a change of heart, takes the kid back off because she misses her already. She loves her. She wants to hold on to her and protect her. Realizes that protection's out of her hands, puts the kid back on the train and sends him to safety. Mother ends up being killed in the Holocaust, being murdered. And so when you look at what's going on, the Kinder Transport, which Winton was a part of, will save about 10,000 children from Eastern Europe. Winton saved 669 kids. What's interesting is after Poland's invaded and World War I officially begins, the doors are closed. No more rescue can take place the way he was rescuing people. And so he goes on with life. He joins the Royal Air Force. He fights in World War II. When the war's over, he goes on with life. He pursues business opportunities and so on. He just lives life, never telling anybody what he did. And it wasn't until I think it was 1988 that his wife was cleaning out the attic and she found a trunk, and inside of the trunk was a notebook and all the documentation of all these kids that were saved. She had no idea. And so she starts to investigate, starts to ask questions, and the story unfolds. He didn't tell anybody. So here's a man who rescued 669 children, who doesn't brag about it, doesn't tell people, just lives a very modest life. Continues to help people throughout his life, but keeps that part of his life, that chapter, closed. And eventually, it's an amazing video to watch, because eventually there's a kind of This Is Your Life TV show where his story is told, and he's introduced to a series of people that he saved. And they never knew that this man was responsible for them being alive. Just a very tremendously modest individual. And so when you think about the people we've talked about today, rescuers, there's two groups. There's rescuers and there's resistors. Resistors can be ideological. They can promote propaganda against the Nazis. They can help spread information, run underground newspapers. Resistors can be armed resistors, fighting, blowing up things, trying to harm the German war effort. And then you have rescuers like this who try to get involved not for any personal monetary gain. That disqualifies you. You're still helping people. But if you're in it for your own profit, you're not recognized as a rescuer per se. Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Israel, they have something that's called the Righteous Among the Nations. And as they identify individuals in towns like Lo Chambon, people that get involved in rescue, they investigate the stories, and then they are honored with the title Righteous Among the Nations. So people who are righteous, people who did what was right, at risk to themselves, at peril to their own lives, people who risked and rescued. So I guess when we look at our story here as Homestead High School, are there events like this going on in the world? And you look at civil war in Syria, you look at what's going on in Africa, you look at killings that are happening around the world. Can we get involved? Can we help people? Absolutely. That's a very big picture, the world as a whole. What can we do right here within our own school environment? What can we do within our own Southwest or Fort Wayne community? How can we get involved and how can we help? I know a lot of people out there do great things. A lot of you do charity work. A lot of you do volunteer work. A lot of you give of your own time. It'd be great to highlight those stories. So many times people think of schools and they think of teenagers in a negative light. And a lot of times in the hallways, do we reinforce the negative when we should be reinforcing the positive? What can each of us do to reinforce the positive? What kind words can we deliver to somebody in the hallway? A handshake, a high five, encouragement. What can we do to make being positive somewhat contagious? Let's think about that, and let's transform our hallways. How can we serve those around us? And so as we move forward from here, as we look at different lessons down the road, I'm going to kind of look at some more rescuers. We'll talk about resistors. We'll look at ways in which we can get involved in the big world picture. How can we send help overseas? Last year we sponsored 3 students in Rwanda, and now these 3 students are getting an education that they wouldn't have gotten if we wouldn't have helped, and they will transform the world in which they live because of our action. What can we do? What can we do as teachers to arm you to go out and to engage your world? We'll talk about that. And then also your ideas. What are your ideas from a student perspective? What can you do to change your world, to change the hallways? So there's a lot to talk about, and this is some very positive information. This is what can we do to transform. It's heavy. It can be scary. But collectively, I think that we can make a big difference. So I want to thank you for listening to me today. This is episode number 4. I wish you a very happy Friday Eve, which is how I like to think about Thursday. And enjoy your weekend. As always, my big campus, leave questions or comments for me. Your advisory teachers, see me in the hallway, whatever it is. But let's pursue this. Let's look at how can we make a positive difference. So thank you.